You're listening to the ADHD Support Talk Radio podcast. ADHD Support Talk is brought to you by addclasses.com. Visit www.addclasses.com to sign up for free webinars and programs today. Hello and welcome back to ADHD Support Talk Radio. I'm your co-host, Lynne Edris, and I am a productivity and ADHD coach. So I help overwhelmed professionals reduce procrastination, improve time management, and get more done with less effort so that they have more time and more energy for what matters most to them. As you guys know, I'm a woman with ADD myself, so I have been where so many of you are, and I've come out the other side, so to speak. So I've gone from living in that constant state of chaos and overwhelm and underperformance to a life of more success and fulfillment than I ever once dreamed possible. And I believe every single one of you can share the same success. You can learn more about me and what I do and the programs and services I offer at www.coachingadvantages.com. And if you'd like to join my next live online productivity workshop, you can simply text the keyword productivity to the number 33777 to find out about the next free event. Well, today I want to talk about procrastination, memory, and adult ADHD. And this has been a topic that's been coming up a lot lately for my clients. And that's what often inspires me when I'm trying to decide, what to talk about on these podcast episodes. At the time that I'm recording this, it is the second week of December. So we're heading into full gear with the Christmas holidays and all the other December holidays. And it's a bit insane for many of us, right? So our ability to follow through is challenged. Our systems are challenged, our tools are challenged, and our memories are challenged for sure. So I had a call with a client today. She's a super smart lady, very successful by, I think, just about any definition. And she asked me sort of in the middle of the session, why do I procrastinate? And I said, tell me a little bit about what's going on specifically. So she had mentioned that there were a few things that she'd been putting off doing, and she felt horrible about them, right? One of them was she borrowed something from someone that she hadn't returned. Another one was that she owed money to someone. And those are things that are important to her, right? She doesn't want to be that person who doesn't pay a debt. She doesn't want to be that person who owes something to someone and isn't courteous and isn't thoughtful. That's really not who she is. So I was thinking to myself, like many years ago, gosh, I don't remember exactly when it was, I was writing a presentation about procrastination, and I kept using that word over and over and over again. So I did what I often do. I pulled out my good old-fashioned dictionary, my literal dictionary, right, hardcover book, and I looked up the word procrastination. And I was really shocked to see that the definition of procrastination in that dictionary was something like, I don't have it in front of me, but it was something like to put off intentionally doing something that one knows needs to be done. The word intentionally was in there. It was like one of the first words, right? To intentionally put off, or to put off intentionally doing something that one knows needs to be done. And I was like, well, crap. When I am thinking I am procrastinating, or when so many of my clients say they are procrastinating, it really isn't intentional. It isn't like choosing not to do something because we don't care about it. That's what that implies to me, right? If you say that somebody's intentionally choosing not to do something, or intentionally choosing to put off something they need to do, that tells me there's willfulness, that tells me there's choice, that tells me there's, a lack of care about the outcome. And that generally is not what's going on for those of us with ADHD, right? So this client, I brought that up to the client and I said, so here's what procrastination really means. Like, here's the sort of textbook dictionary type definition of procrastination. When you are thinking about those things that you haven't done, does it feel like a choice and that you really don't care about the outcome? So does it feel like you're really intentionally putting those things off? And she said, gosh, of course not. Like, I feel horrible. I was embarrassed and, whatever. So that's a different problem, right? So if someone is procrastinating and they are intentionally choosing not to do something that they know they need or ought to do, there is a values assessment, or there's a values component to that, right? So they're choosing not to do something intentionally because they either don't care about the outcome or they don't value the thing that needs to be done. And that's a lot different than forgetting or, not remembering at the right times or losing track or, whatever it is that might be happening when you have ADHD. If you are intentionally choosing not to do something, intentionally choosing to put off something you know you need to do, that's a moral decision. That's an ethical decision. That's values related, right? So when we're not doing something that we know we ought to do, and we make that moral judgment about that thing, right? That's got a certain kind of solution. So if you don't care about what other people think, if you don't care about how your actions are impacting other people, if you don't care about the outcome, that's one kind of problem that has one kind of solution, right? Then we've got to work on values, big picture, who you are stuff. If you are not doing something because you forget, because you misplace, because you lose track, that's got a different solution. So really thinking about when you're procrastinating or when you're telling yourself you're procrastinating, when you're putting something off, when you're not following through on something, what's underneath of that? Is it because you don't care? Is it because you don't care about how it impacts other people? Is it because you don't care about the outcome? Because that's got one kind of solution. That's a values, moral judgment, ethical kind of a dilemma. That's got a different kind of a solution. One that's related to moral and ethical and values, judgment kinds of solutions, right? That kind of an approach. If you're not following through, if you're not taking care of something, if you're putting something off because you're forgetting, because you've lost track of it, because you don't think of it at the right time, because it's getting lost in the shuffle of all of the other things that you need to do, that's got a completely different kind of solution. So it's really important to be aware of that distinction. So much of what we call procrastination is a memory issue when we have ADHD. It's about managing the things that we need to do in our minds. It's about our forgetfulness. It's about not being fully present or paying attention in the moment so that we can do something about not remembering in the future, right? When you are forgetting to do something in the future, that's your prospective memory. So your prospective memory is the part of your memory that remembers to do something at a future point in time, right? So if I'm thinking I need to take the trash out when I get home, it's my prospective memory that I'm going to be relying on to remember to take the trash out when I get home. And that's not something that those of us with ADHD do particularly reliably, right? If it's the fact that I've got too much going on and I'm relying on my memory for all of the things that I need to take care of, that's a big problem. But again, it's not a moral or ethical problem that has a moral or ethical approach to the solution. It's about systems and tools and strategies. So with our notorious struggles with memory, we need to be really careful to make sure that we're leaning on tools and systems and strategies that compensate for our memory struggles. We call that in coaching externalizing the challenge, right? So if the challenge is with something that's going on in your brain, basically how your brain works in terms of your memory, then we need to compensate for that by externalizing that function. That's where things like reminders and to-do lists and systems for task management are so important. But it's really important to remember that you can't rely on your memory. It's really important to remember that your memory is wonky and unreliable, but that's not part of your moral and ethical sort of values. That's part of how your brain's wired, and that's something that needs to be strategized for. That's something that we need to find a practical, tactical strategy for. So in this case, the client that I was talking to, it was a memory and an organizational issue. So every time she thought of it, she worried about it, she felt bad about it, but she didn't have a good system in place for making sure that she had what she needed when she saw those people, or making sure that she could take care of it in a moment that was appropriate. So we worked on some strategies. But again, if you're not distinguishing between true procrastination and what's really going on, you're going to be mired in blame and shame. You're going to be beating yourself up. You're going to be feeling badly about it. You're going to be telling yourself you need to try harder, and that isn't going to solve your problem. When the problem really is tactical and it's strategic and it's about tools and systems and, again, compensating or externalizing those things that you struggle with, that's a completely different set of solutions. It's a really important thing to keep in mind. That's why I always say that as long as you are beating yourself up, as long as you are feeling blame and shame and you're giving yourself 40 lashes, that self-flagellation thing I'm always talking about, you are 180 degrees from where you need to be to solve your problems. Okay? You can't be in proactive problem-solving perspective. You can't be in solutions mode and be beating yourself up for being a bad person at the same time. Those two things cannot exist at the same time. So cut yourself some slack. That doesn't mean let yourself off the hook. That means cut yourself some slack. Stop beating yourself up. Stop and think for a minute. What's the real problem here? It's not that I don't care. It's that I've lost track of things, or that I, don't have a good system in place for remembering when I need to remember, or whatever it is. But that's a strategic problem with a strategic solution, not a values problem or a moral problem with a moral or values related solution. It's a really important distinction to make. It's a really important perspective shift, and something that I hope you guys will think about. If you have questions, if you have thoughts, please feel free to join us in the ADHD Support Talk community on Facebook. Happy to answer any questions, happy to share your thoughts. Again, guys, I'm not saying let yourself off the hook. I'm not saying don't take responsibility. I'm telling you to think about it differently. And that's super important. Okay? I hope I've given you some things to think about. If you find our podcast helpful, please visit us on iTunes and leave us a review. The more positive reviews we have, the more people can find our podcast. And I've heard from so many of you, and I really appreciate the comments and the notes and the emails about how helpful you find this information, so you can make it a little easier for someone else to find it as well. Thanks again for listening. I'll catch you guys later. And as always, I really appreciate your attention. Take care.